Hi, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. So thank you for being here today. I'm very excited for today's conversation. Media companies today, and as always, we've had petabytes of really valuable content and footage. And many companies we find right now are looking for opportunities to monetize, to be able to generate new direct revenue from the content that they own. And today I'm really excited to introduce our guest, who is Dave Davis, Chief Content Officer at Protege AI, who helps media companies monetize their assets through licensing through data content licensing. Um, Cool. I'm Soyoung. I'm one of the co-founders of a company called TwelveLabs, where we build AI models for content understanding. So you're able to generate auto tag, create any metadata, do semantic search across vast amounts of content and video. Dave, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and Protege.
Sure. Thanks, So Young. Thanks for having me here. It's really great. This is actually I've been in the media industry for about 20 years, but this is my first NAB. So I spent most of my career at places like Universal and 20th Century Fox and Paramount, doing a lot of content sales and distribution. Got to about 2023, started to get excited about AI, founded a company called Calliope Networks to aggregate copyrighted works to license to AI companies, and then met the guys at Protege. They had a similar vision, and we combined up. They acquired Calliope Networks in late 2024. We now work with about 160 media companies around the world. Those are companies across news and sports and movies and television and animation and beyond. So we've aggregated a broad catalog over 500,000 hours. And you can imagine it's hard to remember what's in every nook and cranny of that catalog. And that's, so one of the reasons we'll talk about today, but one of the reasons we use a lot of the 12 Labs technology.
Awesome. So TwelveLabs being an AI company that provides indexing, contextual understanding of assets, I think one of the most commonly used marketing phrases for us in the past and still sometimes today has been unlock your archive, unlock your video data. Um, this sounds vague, but Dave, I think you can provide some very specific insight to what does it mean for a media company to unlock their archive and video data.
Yeah, no, we work with companies of all sizes. So we work with some companies with, a few hundred hours of catalog and with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of hours of catalog. And it's, oftentimes it can be pretty messy. So some of them are in a process to digitize old tapes, and then once they've digitized it, they've got to know what they have. The catalog itself has a fair amount of value if you know what's in it. AI companies, we'll talk more about this, but they want all kinds of content. They may want, very specific curated scenes. They may want, an example, an AI company may come to us and say, we just need thousands of shots of horses walking across a meadow, or we just need thousands of shots of flags waving, or something like that. So we use tools that we'll talk more about to delve deeply into the catalog to be able to see at the scene level, at the shot level, to be able to unlock that. I should note these tools are really useful for media companies, not just for AI training where I live. They're useful for sort of traditional, needing content for clips licensing or to use, to leverage your archive for other uses.
And just to paint the picture of what we mean by content here for licensing, you gave really great example of a horse. Are there certain genres or types of content that are more valuable than others, or do they all share similar opportunities for monetization?
It evolves quickly and rapidly, and there's so many different kinds of AI companies doing so many different things, that it's hard to nail that down at any moment in time. I'll say that cinematic content has frequently been valuable, so any kind of scripted content. But we've done a lot with factual content. We've done a lot with news. We've done stuff with sports. Some of the standards that AI companies are looking for. They want high quality. They want 1080p video typically or higher. They want good capture, good lighting. They don't want a shaky camera. So when we say that cinematic's good, Not all cinematic's good. Like horror movies aren't very good because the scenery tends to be poorly lit. It tends to have a shaky camera to build, the sensation and the suspense. But there's a lot that is useful. It does change, every week.
So I think we are starting from a place where, let's say I am a media company and I have, whether the genre is news, sports, film, and I have a library of content and I come to Protege. What happened? Can you walk us through the step by step of what does it take to make this content monetizable and trainable?
Sure. So the first thing is we'll negotiate a deal. That's pretty straightforward. We do revenue share deals. Then we will figure out a way to ingest your content. So our catalog is on AWS. We get your catalog to whatever you're licensing to us on AWS. Then we put it through an internal process, and part of that processing is to run it through the 12 Labs models to do frame level embeddings, which really allows us to later be able to query all that information to be able to find everything that you want. Again, finding the needles in the haystack, finding the horses walking across a meadow. Once it's been processed, we have a good idea of what's in the catalog. We can also, sort of process and get top level metadata, so we can understand things like genre and language for the content. By the way, all of this is really useful for raw footage, which is often not cataloged at all. Um, Once we've got that, then our go-to-market team partners with our data lab. So Protege has a team in-house called Data Lab, which is a team of data scientists, and they work with AI researchers at AI labs, not just to say, "Hey, we need 20,000 hours of sports," but to talk about what is the problem that you're trying to solve by having 20,000 hours of sports, and then our data lab will help them to curate a data sample, a data set that really is purpose built to solve the problems that they're working towards. Then hopefully we make some sales, send some revenue, and happily we've sent a lot of royalties out to our partners so far.
And at what point did you start to look to consider AI tools to help curate and tag the catalogs? There may have been other technologies or other ways of using existing metadata. I'm curious what might have been lacking there. What made you decide where you're going to kind of leverage AI tooling that was available at the time to be able to do that process?
It was a defined need basically for a specific deal. So we were talking to one of the largest foundation labs. They had a huge RFP where they needed heavily curated video data from a ton of genres, a ton of very specific shots that they were looking for. And we said this is early kind of spring of 2025. And we figured out we needed this technology. We went shopping around the market to figure out, who has it and who could do this for us. And of course, settled on 12 Labs ultimately as a great solution for us. And that worked out really well. We did an initial deal with that company where we licensed these companies when they want shots of horses walking across a meadow, they don't want 20 shots of it. They want like 10,000 shots. So the deal that we did with this AI company was for 500,000 individual shots, carefully curated. We were able to really refine a very good data set with Marengo from 12 Labs, by initially text prompting to figure out what was in our data set, and then out of that building certain video clips that we thought were really perfect. So we created a golden set and then let the model see the golden set. And that really let us get a very good data set across pretty massive scale.
I want to double click on what you said around AI companies not wanting 20 clips, they want 20,000 clips of certain contexts that they're needing at a given moment. For people in this room who may not all be training AI models, from your perspective and your clients' perspectives, are there aspects of AI buyers or companies that uh, are different from the way that traditional licensing works. Some of the challenges or characteristics that they have in that process.
Yeah, massively different. First of all, AI companies don't care if Tom Cruise is in your movie. They just want like good quality video capture. Probably better if Tom Cruise isn't in your movie, honestly. Um, what they want, it is, I've said a couple of times, it's evolving pretty rapidly. Going back a year, what AI companies wanted, they wanted long form content. They wanted a lot of hours. They were tending, most of the generative video companies were doing fine tuning, or sorry, were doing pre-training for their training needs. And they just needed a lot of volume. Now that evolves to much more fine tuning. That is often this shot level curation that we're talking about, which is really different um, from sort of Hollywood licensing that I had done before. The other thing I'll say about that is that the actual deal negotiations are really different. So um, the media industry doesn't speak the same language as AI companies. In the media industry, we call it content. In the AI world, they call it data. In media, we've got concepts of limited license periods. That was really foreign to AI companies initially. We've worked. One of the things I'm really proud of that Protege has done is we've worked to bridge that gap in vocabulary and in language. These aren't, we work with the largest companies in the world. They're not easy to work with. And honestly, one advantage that we have is we've been able to find ways to work with them. We have paper in place and we can move quickly with them.
How about time to delivery? Is that also is there more patience there around getting the assets or getting the data that they want, or is it more I need it now?
I need it now. Um, so a story that we hear again and again from everybody doing AI training, and we certainly see it, is we're working with PhD researchers at these AI companies, and they get very excited about something very specific. And when they get excited about it, they want it now. And if you miss that window and you come back to them 2 weeks later and say, actually, we found it. You wanted, you know, 5,000 hours of, hands knitting a sweater. Guess what? We found it. And it's like 2 weeks later, they're like, no, we moved on. I don't know if they solved it, but they're on to something else. So being able to act really quickly has been really important. That's not always the case, but that's frequently the case. We talk a lot at Protege about Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and Lucy pulling it away. The football gets pulled away a lot. Happily, we're able to close a lot of deals, and it makes it well worth it. But there's a lot of missed shots.
That's very interesting. I think you mentioned, so I think you walked us through three unique traits of AI companies licensing media content. One is they may not care about the same things that traditional like licensing value or IP value might have been. There's always a unique context at a given moment that becomes valuable. That you may not know what you have in your catalog or your library is valuable. That may be extremely valuable to the client. I think the second one was difference in language and vocabulary of it's a different language that they speak. And so almost you need some sort of translation layer to be able to really effectively communicate with the buyer and the media rights owner. And then the third was time to delivery. It seems like there's very little kind of patience around delivery. When you need it, you need it now. So that's a very helpful picture of how Protege works with your clients. I want to kind of transition into ROI, and I think a lot of questions that companies might have is how does quality compare to quantity in terms of the value of a library? Yeah.
So e- everything needs a degree of quality. So again, I mentioned, 1080p resolution and image capture. I think going back a year ago, it was so much about volume and wanting 50,000 hour deals and 100,000 hour deals and maybe a little less picky on exactly what was in there, at a certain baseline of quality. But now it's becoming, the quality is the need for quality is much more, and again, I'll be a broken record, the need for careful curation is much more. So that evolution continues. Our hypothesis is that going forward there's going to be a time when AI companies are going to want to res to 4K. They may want to, start ingesting more HDR content, Dolby Vision content. So we think that's a trend that's going to continue. We already are getting requests for 4K. 4K is not easy to work with, but it's just heavy files.
And if that's the case, kind of question on the ROI piece would be what are media companies then actually losing by having their video content be undiscoverable?
Losing nothing other than a little bit of time and investment. So it's, I think again, I worked at companies with vast catalogs, and with Protege, we've now aggregated a vast catalog. There's always value to having discoverability in your catalog, to knowing what's hidden in there and what can be extracted. I heard a story the other day of a media company the pretty big media company that because they literally couldn't find a series that they had in their catalog, they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars of licensing revenue. Just couldn't find it. And that's just traditional media. That's no AI.
And that's all opportunity that's newly been created over the past few years very quickly. I want to transition to market opportunity and timing in that case, because one of the questions that we hear a lot from our customers who are media owners is when is the right timing to look at licensing their libraries? Because they're constantly bombarded with or requests around companies that may want to license their data for training models or training AI models. And I think finding the right timing, some want to wait more, some are not so sure if the market for AI and data will continue to grow. What is your outlook on how the AI landscape will grow and the demand for original content?
It's a good question, and I think there's a lot of opinions on it. What I'll say is, um, in talking to the AI companies, it seems like the need for data always grows. The need does evolve. So what they needed last year is different than what they need this year. It will be different than what they need next year. But I talked to, an AI partnerships at a really big company, and she sort of, laughs at that question and says, we always need more data. We always have. And, so I think the other thing to remember is we're talking about a big world. I think, the obvious uh, end customer for a company like ours is like, I'll say, Sora. I don't comment on who we've actually worked with, but that would be, an obvious example. And but this goes much broader than that. So we work with AI companies that are developing things around robotics and around 3D world models and around editing tools and visual effects and so many other use cases, voice models. And we see new models popping up all the time. Our go-to-market team will come back to my team with a request to work with some model that I've never heard of, like pretty frequently, and I follow the space really closely. We also see media companies starting to dabble in this space. So Banijay announced that they're launching a model. We hear rumors of other media companies talking about launching models. It makes sense. Maybe video game companies. So you can imagine a world in not very distant future where there are a lot of customers that none of us have heard of today or thought about. Each of those companies will have some of their own training data, but they'll need to supplement that data. It takes a lot of data to train a model, and there aren't a lot of companies in existence that would sort of have it sitting on their servers today.
And I think that's very interesting. It's very similar to I think the way that I view it as well. We've seen such a fast growth of AI, models and their performance, and so one might think, is the demand for data going to center around a few large companies? But it sounds like the demand is going to continue to grow, not just from newer models or larger hyperscalers and companies building models, but also market segments are continuing to grow. It's not just diffusion models. It's not just generative media models. As robotics and physical AI grows, the demand for real content will also it's growing. So there's not a plateau. It's just the types of companies, number of companies, the domains continue to expand.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And our kind of, the content that we're curating expands too. So we're working with, multiple camera angles. We're working with, traditional stereoscopic 3D files. We're working with gameplay video data licensed from game publishers. We're working with multi-camera video content in a driving context, to support moving robots, autonomous driving, etc. So the aperture is wide.
So we have a little less than 5 minutes left before we get to a Q&A section. Dave, I would like to kind of maybe wrap up by asking you for advice for anyone here who has been considering finding opportunities to monetize their catalogs through partnerships with AI companies.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the conversation that we have with media companies a lot is they're nervous about AI. They're nervous that it's going to maybe disrupt their business. They're nervous that maybe, actors' faces in their videos will, pop out of the other side of an AI output. What I tell them is that a lot of content has already been ingested by AI companies that hasn't been explicitly licensed and authorized. So the question generally isn't should I or shouldn't I put my content in AI. The question is my content's already in AI. What do I do about that? So from that standpoint, I think media companies really have three choices. They can ignore that fact. They can litigate if they want to. That's, maybe appropriate in some cases, but it's time consuming and costly. Or they can engage. And I like to sort of misquote Nicholas Thompson, the CEO of The Atlantic. When he did his deal with OpenAI, he got a lot of criticism for that. And when asked about it, he said, "Listen," he said, "I don't know what AI is going to do to journalism. I don't know if it's going to be good for us or bad for us, but I felt like we had a better chance at The Atlantic if we had a seat at the table." And that's really how we view it. We think, by engaging with AI companies, we as Protege and with the strength of the 160 or so media companies behind us, we've helped to shape this market. We've helped to make sure that there are protections against misuse of name, image, and likeness. We've helped to make sure that the creators and producers are getting compensated for their works, and we think that's the right way to do it. I'd say the other piece of advice I'd give is find a partner that you trust, find a partner that has experience, that, hopefully that has a track record in this space.
That's really great advice. I think you're saying yeah, future is inevitable. It's already happening. The thought should be, how do you get a seat at the table and how do you create all the guardrails and risk mitigations proactively is kind of what you're saying. Awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a few minutes left for questions if anyone has questions for Dave.
Uh, Thanks, Dave. Just a quick question. Do you see demand for generation of synthetic data, like e.g. from high-end VFX companies, particularly with the demand around world building models and depth models, generating that content from multiple angles from, say, a single 2D asset? Yeah, how do you see that? And even things like Gaussian splatting.
So there's no question there's demand and use for synthetic data. What I will say is most of the AI companies that we're working with are specifically asking us to rep that we don't have any AI in our content. They want real world data. They want ground truth data, probably to supplement other things that they're doing around synthetic data. And Gaussian splat is my favorite term in the AI or any universe.
Well, we have
Yeah, guys asked a question. I like it. She had a good one last time, so yeah. See how you try. Okay. Understanding AI in a different way. I have my Sunday mornings with Claude, which is my favorite time. It's becoming way more personal and evidently very smart.
As a amateur photographer, I'm thinking, okay, can I add to someone's collection, and how many street photos can I take without totally alienating my surroundings and becoming that guy with the camera, taking a picture of someone doing something? And then how much personal information are we getting? Are we supposed to like capture people picking their nose and wiping something they shouldn't be, or doing the things that people do, but we're afraid to capture because AI needs that information just as much as they need, someone riding a horse 20, 30, 40, 100 times. And then with the imaging, can a lot of that be captured? You're saying 10,000 images. Well, if you have 100, you have a sensor getting everything at a distance, because some of the new Fujifilm cameras are capturing so much information that you can literally zoom in on anything you want. Isn't that just place a camera somewhere and let people go by and then you're capturing information? Is that a legitimate source?
Yeah, so you're touching on some really good questions, primarily around privacy. So, um, Protege's DNA, we actually the company started in the healthcare space, which I think is important context. So, media was Protege's second vertical. Healthcare is a world with HIPAA requirements and strict privacy concerns, so it's something that we worry about. We generally speaking, and I'd sort of defer to our lawyers, but generally speaking, produced works of content. So, documentary that may have, cameras may have man on the street video and may have somebody walking around in the background. I think our lawyers believe that that's fine. And remember, in the context that there's already millions of hours being used for training that wasn't licensed. But then when we get into just somebody sort of posting a surveillance camera on a street corner, that gets much more questionable. We do work with a company that has cameras posted across the savannas in Africa. So we get lots of, and by the way, it's fun to like just scroll through it sometimes. My Sunday mornings with Claude, seeing, elephants and lions and things, but no people in those videos. But really good question. We have other video that is um, out in public, but where faces are blurred or license plates are blurred. That's not useful for generative video, but it can be useful for physical and spatial intelligence, 3D world models.
Forgive me if this is something you already talked about. I came in the latter half of it. I guess and this is a loaded question, by the way, so I understand if it's like not something you can fully answer, but I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on ways that like companies and businesses can push to use this technology in a way that it's not going to result in a large amount of layoffs for their people. So it's like it's not going to result in necessarily same workload, smaller group, pressures from above from your clients and stuff like that who want things done cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
So great question. Something I wrestle with a lot, a little beyond my pay grade, honestly. Let me give an answer though that I think is interesting. So I don't know if AI is going to like cause all of us to lose our jobs or is going to be, massively beneficial for all of us. In general, looking historically, new technologies have cost people with traditional skills their jobs and then have resulted in more opportunity. So hopefully it plays out that way. I'll give one example where I think it is playing out that way. I have a friend with a little advertising firm, does like TV commercials and stuff like that. Uh, I asked him about AI, and I live in Los Angeles. A lot of my friends are, writers and producers and have, some real concerns. I kind of expected him to give me the speech about, why AI is scary. He didn't. He said, "I love AI." He told me a story. He did a, a brand campaign for a microbrew. It was a Mexican microbrew coming to the United States. He said they never could have afforded a campaign like, a Heineken or somebody like that, but they were able to do a really professional campaign for them for like $250,000. Looked great. It's online. It's not on television. But along the way, he hired, real editors and real writers. It's a professionally done campaign. So I don't know how many people are involved in a Heineken or a Budweiser ad, probably, dozens or more. But this was an opportunity for several people to get a real paycheck. And it, from his perspective, it opens up this whole new opportunity of companies that aren't, multiple billions of dollars revenue per year, but this company makes like 20 million a year. And suddenly they can play in a space like this. So so anyway, one positive example, but I agree. It's a space to watch. I've got two kids in college. We talk a lot about like how do you plan your career, in a world of AI and of Claude code and everything else.
Hey, Dave, can you just give a little bit into the weeds a little bit on the metadata you're talking about for small content creators that are filming documentary that, has a lot of archives? How do you actually get through the process of into AI ready assets?
Yeah, from a metadata standpoint, again, this is really where we lean on 12Labs quite a bit. We can process the content through one of their models called Pegasus, which gives us top level metadata. So that's going to give us genre. I think it gives us the title name. It gives us basic facts at a top line level. And then we process it through Marengo, their other model, or one of their other models, to do frame level embeddings. And that we don't get out of that. I don't think we get out of that. Maybe Soyoung can comment. I don't think we get like a physical description that we can read. We're getting a numerical thing that is machine readable that is meaningless to me. But then when I go, query the tool to find the horses walking through a meadow, I can find them. So
That's exactly right. So one is human readable description of what's in a video or a moment. The other model allows you, it will create numerical representations that a human can't read. But the system will allow you to then find exact scenes or exact moments, and curate and package across a much larger catalog. Shameless pitch, we are right over there if you want to come take a look. But that's kind of how you would create different forms of metadata that could be put together for curation and annotation. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Dave, again.
yeah, thank you so much. Great to be here.